Several years ago, I was involved in a coal mine blockade on Gomeroi country, northern New South Wales. The mine expansion would mean the destruction of culturally significant and environmentally endangered white box woodlands, and of course mean more coal dug up and burned at a time when there was, and still is, a very pressing need to keep it in the ground. Living more than 1,000 kilometres from the site, I was only a very occasional contributor, but numerous people lived at the blockade. They gave their time and energy, they forewent income they might get from other work, and they put themselves in quite combative and risky situations. The blockaders supported one another and built relationships with some sympathetic locals. They were there to defend marginalised voices, animals and trees, future generations, and people directly facing the consequences of climate change. The miners were largely there to make a living, or perhaps more than a living realistically. What seemed abundantly clear to me was that there was no space for these competing groups to coexist. This was my entry into the world of direct action, and along with many subsequent actions and protests, it has given me several insights. Among them, and important to community economies thinking, are that protest and direct action are often highly antagonistic, that they are battles of truths or matters of fact. At the same time, protest and direct action can build community and care for people. However, this is mostly for those perceived to be on our side. With these two thoughts in mind, I've been thinking a lot with Maria Puig de la Bellacasa's Matters of Care, and I think it offers some interesting insights for protest and direct action. To get there, we'll have to move from fact to concern to care. Firstly, coal mine expansion is often treated matter-of-factly by proponents, that it's necessary to ensure affordable baseload energy as well as allowing the economy to flourish. Of course, that coal mining ought to be abandoned is a matter of fact held dearly by those concerned about climate change. The blockade in the woodlands on Gomeroi country is one materialisation of this battle of matters of fact. Bruno Latour's notion Matters of Concern draws our attention to how facts are constructed and to the collection of concerns associated with them. Coal mines cause a lot of damage, and we undoubtedly need to phase them out. But keep in mind that a coal mine is more than the resulting emissions or the degrading land left in its wake. Coal mines are also people's livelihoods, people's identities. They are machines, utes and fences. They're debates in Parliament, they're opinion pieces in newspapers. We can't cut off all these concerns and objects from the coal mine, even if we disagree with them. In my experience with the politics of activism, I see a strong urge to outline a fixed meaning of what we should be doing or how we should be living, and ruling out those actors or behaviours that don't fit with that vision. Of course, this can only be done by purifying, segmenting, or bracketing out behaviours or actors. Think of the coal mine as a matter of fact, simply a polluting hole in the ground, compared with the broader coal mine assemblage that I just evoked. I think this bracketing out risks ignoring or overlooking the interdependencies of the worlds we inhabit. We unavoidably live together, we exist in common, environmental activists and miners, white box gum trees, and masked owls. In fact, a blockade is a prime example of the togetherness of miners and environmentalists. However, being in common doesn't only mean beneficial or positive relationships or interdependencies. Being in common is also competitive, painful, and at times violent. Consider that even the most basic need of eating inevitably involves acts of killing, whether your diet is vegan or omnivorous. For me, this raises an important question. How do we negotiate being in common, particularly when some actors' voices, concerns and needs are marginalised? Staging coal mining as a matter of care still asks us to consider the concerns attached to mining and how they are constructed, but it also asks us to consider the ways in which needs are met, voices are heard, and consequences borne differently by different actors. This adds critical attention to how things are constructed. For the coal mine, whose voices are heard, whose are ignored, who benefits materially, and whose needs are being met. Clearly, the miner benefits more and at the expense of Pacific Island communities facing existential threat, or the animals that lost their homes, and the trees and grasses that lost their lives to make way for the mine. Caring, like being in common, isn't inherently positive. It can hurt, and it's often hard work. Balakasa argues that caring about what we find destructive can help, or is in fact necessary, to transform it. This doesn't mean we need to tend to what we find destructive, or ensure its maintenance. It means that we have to be engaged with the broader concerns of what we find destructive, if we are able to affect change. So, can we care about coal mines? And will this help us to transform how we produce and consume energy? Does staging coal mines exclusively as polluting, destructive monsters detract from our ability to see how they might be transformed? And what does all this mean for the future of protests and direct action?